Hello and welcome to Newscentre. I'm Parikshit Luthra. The CBI arrested former ICICI Bank MD and CEO Chanda Kochhar, her husband Deepak Kochhar, and Videocon Group Chairman Venugopal Dhoot over the last 3 days for their role in the alleged ICICI Bank Videocon loan fraud case. The agency had named the Kochhars and Dhoot in an FIR way back on 23rd January 2019, alleging that ICICI Bank had sanctioned loans worth 3,250 crores to Venugopal Dhoot-led Videocon Industries in contravention of norms. Chanda Kochhar was a member of the committee which sanctioned these loans. The CBI also alleged that as a quid pro quo, Dhoot invested 64 crores in New Power Renewables, a company founded and headed by Deepak Kochhar, Chanda Kochhar's husband. So this is why the background also, as a result of which the CBI has made these arrests. To take this forward, I'm now joined by AP Singh, former CBI director, and HP Ranina, a corporate lawyer. Thank you very much for joining us today on CNBC-TV18. Mr. Singh, it was 4 years ago that this FIR was registered. Is the arrest at this stage justified? How will the CBI explain the delay in registration of FIR and now making these arrests?
No, I don't think there was any delay in the registration of the FIR because they conducted a preliminary inquiry.
Delay in arrest, sir.
And after that, they registered the Now the arrest, yes, you could say that the arrests were delayed. The CBI says that these two were not cooperating in the investigation. And I think that when they have taken Venu Dhoot's statement, which was a couple of days ago, and as your channel reports that he has agreed to turn an approver, so he may have spilled the beans and he may have told them a lot of things about how this whole fraud was conducted, and that is now the point where CBI wants to confront all three of them in police custody, in their custody, and then get to the truth of the whole scam. I mean, how did it take place? Was it a conspiracy? Who all were involved? Was Chanda Kochhar aware that her husband was doing this deal with Venu Dhoot at the time that all these loans were sanctioned? So all these questions will now have to be asked between all three of them. They'll have to be confronted, and then they will probably come to some logical conclusions. So I think the trigger point probably is the interrogation of Mr. Dhoot. That has escalated this whole situation.
All right. You feel that it is the turning of approver or offering to be an approver in the case by Venugopal Dhoot which has changed things in this case. Mr. Ranina, to get you in at this stage, when it comes to the question of undue influence, in the FIR registered on 23rd January 2019 against Chanda Kochhar, against Venugopal Dhoot, Deepak Kochhar and others, the CBI said that Chanda Kochhar, as MD and CEO, as a member of the sanctioning committee, used her influence, abused her position to make sure that these loans were granted to Venugopal Dhoot-led Videocon Industries in violation of banking laws, in violation of RBI guidelines and the credit policy of the bank. But will the CBI not have to explain how she was able to do all of this alone? If she was a member of the sanctioning committee, was she able to influence all the senior bankers on that committee? Will that be a tough question that the CBI will have to answer?
You're right that members of the committee are equally responsible. But possibly they may take a stand that they were under the influence of Chanda Kochhar, she being the head of the bank at that stage. And therefore, in that sense, they acted by her advice or by her guidance or by her suggestions. So certainly the others will also have to answer CBI as to why did they agree. And they could have certainly, as a group, overruled the suggestions, if any, made by Chanda Kochhar. Therefore, they will have to answer. But therefore, we'll have to see what exactly has transpired, whether they also will come out and make a clean breast of what has happened, we'll have to wait and see. So certainly the interrogation will now start, and it will extend to the other persons who are in the committee as well.
Right. Mr. AP Singh, coming to you, do you feel this whole point, allegation of undue influence, allegation of abuse of power, has this been explained thoroughly? This point on how Chanda Kochhar was able to influence the entire committee, and at this stage, after 4 years of registration of FIR, can non-cooperation be a strong ground for arrest?
See, if you look at the facts, Dhoot and Deepak Kochhar set up a company at a paid-up capital of 5 lakhs. Then suddenly, a year later, 300 crores is sanctioned by ICICI Bank. And the next day, 64 crores are given to this company. So there is obviously a quid pro quo, on face value. Now, somebody has to explain that. That was Chanda Kochhar in knowledge. Did she know that her husband's company is getting the 64 crores from Mr. Dhoot? That is one point. Then secondly, if you see later, 50% of this company is bought by some Mauritius entity in 2016 or 2017. Now, who are these? Who is this 50%? CBI will have to find out. Is this round tripping? Is the money coming back to India? Is it the same people, or is there somebody else who's investing in this company? So all these facts I don't think have come out yet. They will come out, and when you become an approver, you admit your guilt. You're not a witness. You're not just saying that I heard this and I saw this happening. You have to say I was complicit. Only then you can become an approver. So you have to go to court and admit that you are guilty of a crime. So Dhoot's statement, obviously he has said, if what your channel is reporting is correct, that he is offering to turn approver, then he has obviously committed himself that he has committed a crime along with these people, and he must be explaining how the whole thing was done. And that is the reason why they have been arrested, and now they are being interrogated together.
Right. Mr. Ranina, when it comes to quid pro quo, the FIR states that when New Power Renewable, that is Deepak Kochhar's company, was incorporated, Deepak Kochhar, VN Dhoot and Saurabh Dhoot were the first directors. VN Dhoot and Saurabh Dhoot had resigned later. So is there enough trail of evidence leading to quid pro quo in this case?
I would think so, because it's a clear case of just setting up a company with a view to get the money and then quitting the company at a later point of time. Again, all this will have to be explained as to why did they quit the company so fast, what was the reason for it. There certainly is a lot of things. You see, one must understand there's something like circumstantial evidence, because you can't prove everything. But there are so many factors which will be weighed, which will be taken into account by a court before they come to a decision. So all these are factors which will certainly go against the Kochhars, because all the very fact that the money was given, the company was set up in such a short time, new company investors were brought in, again they resigned. All this is certainly going to go against them. And of course, if Mr. Dhoot himself admits to his guilt and makes a clean breast of what has happened, then there certainly will be a nail in the coffin of the Kochhars, and there's no way they can escape the hard end of the law.
All right. Mr. Ranina, also to ask you, what were the violations of banking guidelines of RBI norms of the credit policy of ICICI Bank, which Chanda Kochhar violated?
Well, there are several such guidelines of the RBI which requires the application should be vetted in a particular manner, that certain inquiries have to be made. All this is time consuming. As you know, normally it takes several months before a loan application is approved. And if in this case it was approved in a very short period of time, that itself raises eyebrows. But apart from that, there are a lot of guidelines of the RBI. They have this committee. The committee's report has to be considered. And once the money is paid, then obviously there has to be a monitoring of the amount which is spent out of the loan which is granted. So if monies have been siphoned to somebody which is not for the purpose of the business of the company to whom the loan has been granted, that itself will be violative of RBI guidelines.
Right. Mr. Singh, to get you in at this stage, yes, Venugopal Dhoot has offered to be an approver in this case, but what about the timing of these arrests? This investigation was going on since January 2019. It was only last week that things gathered steam as far as the arrest of the three main characters in this case took place. Deepak Kochhar, Chanda Kochhar, and Venugopal Dhoot was arrested at 9 a.m. this morning. Any thoughts about the timing of this arrest?
No, as I explained to you earlier, that I think Mr. Dhoot was called a few days ago, or maybe in the last 15 days, and that is the time when he must have said that, I want to be an approver, I want to give my statement, I want to tell you what actually happened. And once he said that, then they had to call these people, and they plan a custodial interrogation, means in police custody, and confront all three of them to find out who is telling the truth and what are the actual facts. So I think that has probably triggered off these arrests. That is my assessment of the situation.
Right, Mr. Singh. But Mr. Singh, when it comes to loan fraud, bank fraud cases of this kind, when you have four years which have really gone through, and the arrest is taking place after a substantial period of time from the date of filing of the FIR, what are some of the challenges that the prosecution can confront when the trial begins or while defending the arrest in court?
No, I think the judge has accepted the CBI, whatever the CBI prosecutor has said, the judge has accepted it because he has given them police custody for 3 days or 4 days. So he has obviously accepted whatever points the CBI put up. And as I told you, that these arrests have probably been triggered off by Mr. Dhoot himself. And normally CBI does not arrest unless it's absolutely, essential. No, in white-collar crime, you normally don't arrest people. But in this case, as they say that the coaches have been non-cooperative, they've not been cooperating, they've not explained. Like I told you, half the money of this company has gone to Mauritius. Now, who were the people behind it? They have to explain how did that company happen, and then whatever Mr. Dhoot has said has to be corroborated by them. They have to either deny it or accept it. And if they deny it, then Mr. Dhoot will probably have to produce some evidence to say that the coaches are not telling the truth and are not cooperating with the investigation. So I think a lot of facts must have come out in Mr. Dhoot's statement, which has led CBI to believe that whatever the coaches were saying was actually non-cooperation.
Right. My final question, Mr. Ranina, when it comes to the defense of the coachers of Venugopal Dhoot, what is the plea that they can take? And if there is one aspect which could be challenging for the CBI in the days to come to prove in court, what would that be? Very briefly, sir, we've run out of time.
Well, I don't know the facts, but obviously their lawyers will advise them based on the facts which are revealed by the coaches and by Dhoot. But obviously the one challenge will be to prove, and that is a challenge in every case, to prove the guilt. And CBI will have to prove the guilt. The fact that there was a delay in arresting them, I don't think is very relevant. The crux of the matter is to ultimately prove the guilt of the parties concerned. And then the court will decide and take a final view.
All right. Mr. Ranina, Mr. AP Singh, thank you very much for joining us, putting the arrest of Chanda Kochhar, Deepak Kochhar and Venugopal Dhoot in the ICICI Bank Videocon loan irregularity case for us. This is a story that we'll continue to track very, very closely. We're heading into a short break. But coming up, the government looks at significant fiscal savings as it allows the PM Kisan Anna Yojana to sunset, approves the provision of free food grain under National Food Security Act for a period of 1 year. A special discussion with former Agriculture Secretary Siraj Hussain. Welcome back. The Union government has merged the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana that was started in 2020 during COVID with National Food Security Act. After this move, food grain will be made available free of cost to more than 800 million beneficiaries till December 2023 under the National Food Security Act. Also, the government is looking at significant fiscal savings. We're now joined by Siraj Hussain, former Agricultural Secretary. Mr. Hussain, thank you very much for joining us. Explain us and take us through the rationale behind this move. It is almost a given that PMGKY was to end in December this year. What kind of savings, quantum of savings will this really lead to for the government?
Actually, the government has taken a correct decision not to extend the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana beyond December. And one reason, which I have explained in my article in the print today, is that the government is running short of the stock of food grains in central food. Therefore, really speaking, there was no option but to stop the additional allocations under PMGKY. Now, what is really surprising to many people, including economists, would be the decision to make the food grains totally free.
Right. So when it comes to making the food grains completely free for these beneficiaries under the National Food Security Act for a period of 1 year, what will be the total financial burden to the government, sir? And what does this really mean or leave for the government to do for the agricultural sector, for the farmers in the budget and in other schemes next year?
So the farmers are not impacted by this decision because the farmers are able to sell their wheat and rice at the minimum support price fixed by the government. So farmers are not affected. Now, according to my calculations, if the offtake of food grains is of the level of 2021, then the total hit the union government will take will be about 15,000 crores, which is not very high as far as the government finance is concerned. But the thing is that in the run-up to the parliament elections in 2024 May, it will be very difficult for any government and even the current government to bring back the central issue price of 2 rupees, 3 rupees and 1 rupee for maize. Now, I have written in my article that before the enactment of the National Food Security Act, the government was charging much more, 4 rupees and 6 rupees, about 4 rupees and 6 rupees. So now from that, we have come to free grains. So that is quite a distance which we have traveled.
Right. And when it comes to continuing the scheme beyond December 2023, do you think the government has enough room, sir?
Actually, that will depend on the level of procurement of rice in the current Kharif marketing season and the procurement of wheat in the next Rabi marketing season, which will begin from April. My own hunch is that if the procurement is good, if the government is able to procure, let us say, 50 million tons of rice and about 40 million tons of wheat, then in all likelihood, the government would like to continue it because the parliament elections would be very close in January 2024.
Right. Also explain us the importance, the significance of two food security schemes being merged into one. This is what the Food Secretary also clarified when the press conference, when the cabinet briefing was on Friday. The two food schemes are being merged into one. PMGKY is coming to end in December.
I do not really agree with that interpretation. In my view, the GKY has ended and NFSA beneficiaries will get it free of cost. So I do not see it as merging of the two schemes.
Right. You had also argued in your article how some of these funds could be used better. Why do you feel so, and how do you think it could have been used better?
You see, the funds available for mitigating the impact of climate change for research on various crops are meager. And today, Dr. Gulati has written in his article in the Indian Express that there is a need to augment the expenditure on research and development if we really have to show it to the G20 countries that we really mean business as far as the mitigation of impact of climate change is concerned. So, given an option, I would have recommended investment of this additional 15,000 crores in climate resilient technologies, for which ICAR is implementing a project by the name of NIC.
Right. We've run out of time, but Mr. Siraj Hussain, thank you very much for joining us, putting the free food grain scheme under the National Food Security Act, the rationale behind ending PMGKY and coming up with this one food security scheme, which will be in effect till December 2023. Thank you very much for joining us here on Newscentre. All right, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of the program. Don't go anywhere. News continues on CNBC.